Hey peeps, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about how Elemental Shaman will look like going from Wrath of the Lich King into Cataclysm. Before we get into the talent points and everything, I want to talk about what you get when you select Elemental Shaman. Basically, once you put a first talent point into it at level 10. Baseline, you get Thunderstorm, which doesn't change at all from Wrath of the Lich King. It's the same ability, 45-second cooldown, knocking people back and giving you mana. Next up though, we have Elemental Fury. Now it increases the critical strike damage bonus of your Searing Totem, Magma Totem, your Fire, Frost, and Nature spells by 100%, and additionally removes the Chain Lightning cooldown. In Wrath of the Lich King, it only did the Fire, Frost, and Nature damage part, so this is already a nice gain, especially the Chain Lightning cooldown being removed. Next up, we have Shamanism. Shamanism actually got a huge buff going into Cataclysm. Shamanism only used to give your Chain Lightning and Lightning Bolt spell an additional 20% and your Lava Burst an additional 25% bonus damage. Now, Shamanism increases your Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, and Lava Burst spell by an additional 36% of your spell power, and the cast time is reduced by 0.5 seconds. Now next up we have Mastery Elemental Overload. This is probably my favorite part as an Elemental Shaman in Cataclysm. We already know the Overload, but Overload got changed going into Cataclysm. It used to give your Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning spell a 33% chance to cast a second time for half the damage and no threat. Now it actually scales with Gear because Gear now has a stat Mastery, which increases the percentage of the Overload. Now it also overloads Lava Burst, so now you have Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, and Lava Burst overload a second time for 75% of the normal damage, no threat, no cost. As you can see, you gain 25% damage because in Wrath of the Lich King, you actually only had half damage. Plus now you also have Lava Burst overloading, which also resets with a talent called Lava Surge, which we get into later. Now I want to talk about the Elemental Shaman tree going from Wrath of the Lich King into Cataclysm. First up, in the first row we have 3 talents now instead of 2. The newly added talent gives you 3% crit chance, and the reason is pretty simple. In Wrath of the Lich King you got 5% crit chance from the Enhancement Shaman tree, which you now don't get anymore, so they're giving you 3% for free in the first talent. Next to it we have the Mana Reduction talent. In Wrath of the Lich King you needed 5 points to go to 10%, now you only need 2 points to get to 10%. Next to it we have Concussion, which only needs 3 points to do 6% more damage for your Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Thunderstorm, and Lava Burst, and the Shock spells. In Wrath of the Lich King you needed 5 points for 5% damage. Below those we have Call of Flame, which is basically the exact same, the only thing that changed is the damage numbers. Instead of giving you 15% damage for your Fire, Totems, and Fire Nova, it's now 20, and the damage done by your Lava Burst is now 10% instead of 6. Next to it we have the Elemental Warding talent. 6% all damage to 12% magical damage. It basically doubled in value, but it's only magical damage now. Next to it we have a new talent which reduces the cooldown of your shock spells by 1 second, and importantly reduces the wind shear cooldown by 10 seconds. This comes very handy whenever you are on a boss fight with a lot of interrupts needed. Next up we have Elemental Precision. This is basically the same talent going from Wrath of the Lich King into Cataclysm. The only thing that changes now is that instead of giving you threat reduction and hit, it gives you hit and spell hit rating equal to 100% of your spirit gained from items or effects. Meaning spirit is finally not a dead stat for us, and it's easier to reach hit cap with spirit items. Next to it we have a new talent called Call of Thunder. When you deal damage with your Lightning Bolt or Chain Lightning while your Lightning Shield is active, you have a 60% chance to recover 2% of your mana and generate an additional Lightning Shield charge up to maximum of 9. Below that we have Fulmination, which allows you to use those Lightning Shield charges with your Earth Shock to instantly deal their total damage to an enemy, giving you a really nice burst. Next to that we have Elemental Focus, which didn't change at all from Wrath of the Lich King. Next to that we have Elemental Reach, which increases the range of your Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Fire Nova, Lava Burst spells by 10 yards, and increases the range of Shock spells by 15 yards. If you compare it to Wrath of the Lich King, the Shocks stay with 15 yards increased range, but you only had 6 yards for your main abilities, Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, and Lava Burst, which now go up to 10 from 6. Below that we have Elemental Oath, which is the exact same from Wrath of the Lich King. Next to that we have Lava Flows, which increases the critical strike damage bonus of your Lava Burst spell by an additional 24%, which is the exact same from Wrath of the Lich King, but they added a new thing. The periodic damage of your Flame Shock is increased by 60%, and in addition, when your Flame Shock is dispelled, you gain 90% spell haste, and Wrath of the Lich King it was only 30% spell haste. Next up in the next row we have Fulmination, which we already talked about, and now one of my favorite abilities, Elemental Mastery. We already know this ability from TBC, Wrath of the Lich King in Classic, Vanilla, but now this is actually a cooldown. So in Wrath of the Lich King it gave you 15% haste and an instant cast ability. Now it gives you instant cast and haste, but the haste is increased by 5%, and now in addition you also do 15% increased fire, frost and nature damage, which is very insane because this is an actual damage cooldown now that benefits you anyway, even if you're a haste lock. We had a lot of issues in Wrath of the Lich King with using Elemental Mastery, especially with our ICC tier set, because we were running in a lot of haste cap territory. Below that, very important, is called Feedback. This is basically our ICC tier set. Your Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning spells reduce the remaining cooldown of Elemental Mastery by 3 seconds. So this is up quite a lot and now giving you 15% increased damage, very, very useful. Next to that we have Earth Grasp. Grants your Earthbind totem a 100% chance to root nearby enemy targets for 5 seconds when cast. This is never skilled unless you're doing PvP, or it's very, very rare situations in raid where you actually need it. Next to that is one of the coolest changes coming into Cataclysm. This is basically our Wrath totem. But now every single fire totem increases the spell power of party and raid members within 100 yards by 10%. We finally have the same buff as a Demo Warlock, and you can use any fire totem to have this buff up. Meaning Fire Alley, Searing Totem, Magma Totem, it doesn't matter. This is 100% up and you can finally actually be useful and have a raid buff. Now for one of the best talents also added to Cataclysm, Lava Surge. This gives you periodic flame shock ticks, a 20% chance to reset the cooldown of your Lava Burst spell. This is super important, especially on fights where you can multi-dot with a new glyph that we get as well, which technically is an old glyph but a little bit of a rework. We will talk about that after this. When you multi-dot, you have a lot of procs of Lava Burst. With the new overload chance, especially with Lava Burst, then hitting for 75% of an additional damage for free is super duper amazing and increases your single target damage by quite a lot. Now our capstone bottom talent, Earth. This went through a lot of things whenever the actual Cataclysm came out. It used to be a channel, and then it was a cast, and then it was on the floor. As far as I know, this could obviously change on official servers. Earthquake is quite useless until for like 6, 7, 8 targets. The damage of this spell, especially with a 2.5 second cast, just isn't worth it. Some people might say it is, some people might say it isn't. We just have to wait and see. But as of right now, Chain Lightning with a Glyph is just way more damage than casting an Earthquake, unless you need to have the random knockdowns on like ads or something like that when they're casting, because it gives you a 10% chance of knocking down enemies, which is quite helpful. Now we're done with the Elemental tree. Let's go into the Enhancement Shaman tree. The first talent is kind of the same as Elemental Weapons. It increases all the elemental weapon effects by 40, 50, and whatever percent. So this will basically just be for your flankdown weapon and increasing the ability by 40%. Next to that, we have improved shields. It increases the damage done by your lightning shield orbs by 15%. And if you remember correctly, we have the Fulmination talent, which with Earth Shock, you release all the extra lightning shield charges to deal damage to an enemy instantly. So this basically just increases that damage as well. Now below that, we have 2 more talent points left. I like to take Ancestral Swiftness because it removes the custom of your Ghost Wolf and also increases the movement speed by 15%. And in Cataclysm, you can actually use Ghost Wolf basically anywhere, everywhere. Now let's talk about the glyphs in Cataclysm. So when we're going from Wrath of the Lich King to Cataclysm, we get a thing called Prime Glyphs. Those are above the major glyphs and basically are replacing the major glyphs from Wrath of the Lich King. They're basically just stepping up one. You will see what I mean. So in the Prime Glyph category, we have a lot of glyphs, but only a few of them are actually useful for us. First up, we have Unleashed Lightning, which allows you to use Lightning Bolt during moving, which is super good. But you also got to keep in mind that we have Spirit Walker's Grace, which allows you to cast any spell during movement, which on fights where you only have to move in certain moments might actually be better because there's a different glyph called Lightning Bolt, which is the exact same from Wrath of the Lich King, which is super sad, increasing your Lightning Bolt damage by 4%. And if I have anyone from Blizzard listening, please put this to 10%. Every single spec basically has their filler spell increased by 10%. We have Shadow Priest, we have Boomy, or all that type of people have their filler spell Wrath and Mind Flay increased by 10%, but we are still at 4%. Next up, we have the Fire Elemental Totem Glyph, exact same from Wrath of the Lich King. Later on, we get a bonus that your Lightning Bolt reduces the cooldown of Fire Elemental Totem, So you're going to use this glyph and different talents to increase the duration of your fire ally and reduce the duration of the cooldown. Below that we have the Flame Tongue weapon, which is the exact same as well. It gives you 2% crit. It's not as useful as the other things, and you're most likely not gonna take it. And now the Flame Shock glyph I was talking about earlier. The Flame Shock glyph increases the duration of your Flame Shock spell by 50%, meaning the duration is way higher, especially when you multi-dot. So you have it running easier, you don't have to tap target as much and keep it up on multiple targets. It's super easy. Also giving you Lava Burst resets, which are super duper nice. Now let's talk about the major glyphs. First up, we have the Chain Lightning glyph. The Chain Lightning glyph increases the additional targets by 2, but you deal 10% less initial damage. On fights where there are 5-6 targets where you need to have a lot of AoE, you want to have Chain Lightning. Of course, when there's a fight where there's only the boss and 1 or 2 extra targets, you want to not use this glyph because the 10% less initial damage will hurt you in that case. Next up, we have the Healing Stream Totem glyph. This increases the fire, frost, and nature resistance of your raid members within 30 yards by a certain amount. Paladins only have fire, frost, and shadow resistance, while we have fire, frost, and nature. So basically, you want to have this up all the time, especially since, you know, nature resistance is quite useful in some cases. Also, it doesn't cost anything since you want to have Healing Stream Totem up anyway. Another glyph you can use is Stoneclaw Totem. Your Stoneclaw Totem places a damage absorb shield on you equal to the 4 times the strength of the shield it places on your totems. Basically, a kind of a defensive for you. It's pretty damn weak, but it can be useful in some cases. Then we also have Lightning Shield. Your Lightning Shield can no longer drop below 3 charges from dealing damage to attackers. Some people say you don't need it in Cataclysm because you never drop below 3 anyway. Once you use your Fulmination stacks with your Earth Shock, but whenever you get hit by certain mechanics, sometimes your Lightning Shield can drop a stack. So I just like having this. Another option is kind of more of a PvP thing is, while your ally mastery is active, you take 20% less damage from all sources. Can help in certain fights, but you kind of want to use it on cooldown anyway because it's a damage increase. So the 20% less damage might not help you because you cannot really control it. And last up, we have the Thunder Glyph, which reduces the cooldown of Thunderstorm by 10 seconds. Really good for AoE and mana situations where you need it. Now we're talking about the minor glyphs, and nothing changed there at all. You want to take Thunderstorm because you don't want the knockback and you get more mana. You want to have the renewed life so you don't need the reagent anymore, and then you have a free glyph. I like taking the Arctic Wolf glyph because it changes the Ghost Wolf transformation to an Arctic Wolf, so you just look cool. That's basically it. There's nothing really going on there. Now let's talk about the new spells you get in Cataclysm. We already talked about Spirit Walker's Grace. It allows you to cast any spell while moving for 10 seconds on a 2-minute cooldown. We have Healing Rain, which puts down an AoE circle of rain, which heals all the allies inside every 2 seconds. This is very helpful even with ally Shaman. You can save some people with this, and you can just pop a pre-fight, honestly. Then we have Unleash Elements. Basically, depending on what weapon imbue you have on, which we will use Flame Tongue weapon, you will use it, and then it does fire damage, plus the next spell of fire is improved. There's a way where you can use Lava Burst and immediately use Flame Shock after, and then both spells benefit from it, but the DPS gain is so minimal that it's not even worth using. Then we have Totem of Tranquil Mind. This is kind of like the Paladin aura. It just reduces the channel time while you're damaged, which is helpful when you don't have a Paladin. Then we have Greater Healing Wave. It's just a really big heal, honestly, with a long cast time, but super nice, super cool. Then we have Bind Elemental, which is very useful in Firelands. It basically is like a banish where you can use it on an elemental and then they cannot do anything for 50 seconds unless they're damaged again. And we have Earthquake, which we already talked about. We have Primal Strike, which is basically an improved auto attack, which we don't use at all. Then we have the Elemental Resistance Totem. It summons an Elemental Resistance Totem, which basically does the same as the Glyph we talked about earlier. This totem uses your Water Totem, meaning it's either Healing Stream or this, but if you use the Healing Stream Glyph, it does the same as the Elemental Resistance Totem, plus you have the heal. We also get Cleanse Spirit, which removes 1 curse effect from a friendly target. We didn't have this at all baseline, it used to be only a resto spell. And if you have the Improved Cleanse Spirit, it's also 1 harmful magic effect, which only exists in the resto tree, I'm pretty sure. A lot of totems got removed, as in Fire Resistance, Frost Resistance, and Nature Resistance totem. And for that, we have the Elemental Resistance Totem. Also, Cleansing Totem got removed, where they gave us the Cleansing Spirit ability. I hope this video helped you out and you got a little bit of insight into the Elemental Shaman and Cataclysm. I shall see you in the next video. If you liked it, please give me a sub and a thumbs up, and see ya.